True Detective. All right. This week's Left Jab concerns
Get scope outlast.
okay. Man of the frontier in 20th century America. Good evening. This is Earl Morgan. This is the Earl Morgan Hour. I'm your host. And this week we have a very interesting show. We have someone who will be here talking about civics, which I was unaware of till recently. So many people have missed. It's no longer being taught in the schools. And it's something everybody should know, but we just haven't done it any study, given it any attention at all. Before we get started, let me tell you that you're listening and watching to the Earl Morgan Hour. You can follow us on Twitter at Earl Morgan Hour and Facebook, the Earl Morgan Hour. And if you're so moved by something that's said or done in this program, you can also call us at 714-888-7444, and we'll put you right on the air. We encourage that type of participation in our program. We're hoping that you can also donate to the GoPro Radio Network by clicking on the donate button on our homepage, and whatever you can spare will be appreciated. Believe me, we would like to see that happen. So, without too much further ado, because we've got a pretty long program tonight, and I want to make sure we get everything in there, I want to start talking about our first segment, which is book notes. And this week's text is Gunfighter Nation, The Myth of the Frontier in 20th Century America, which is actually the third book of a trilogy written by Professor Richard Slotkin that chronicles U.S. history from a pop culture vantage point. Considering the growing scourge of gun violence in our streets, in our schools, and other public places, coupled with the sweep of stand your ground laws that have been adopted by more than a dozen states, the country is truly becoming the gunfighter nation. In his book that can be purchased through Amazon.com, Slotkin probes the myth of the Western frontier, which assumed through so-called manifest destiny that the United States of America would dominate and control the entire continent from sea to shining sea, as of course it did, and in the process of making that happen would conquer the native Indians that occupied the land, which is also something that happened. This conquest has been tagged the taming of the West or the taming of the wilderness, and is a narrative deeply embedded in the U.S. psyche. In fact, U.S. troops in Vietnam often described themselves as being in Indian country. John F. Kennedy, in announcing the space program, referred to it as the, quote, new frontier, close quote. Indeed, he invoked the same symbolism to explain the counterinsurgency strategy pursued during the war in Vietnam. President Theodore Roosevelt, who at the time was himself a soldier enlisted in the Spanish-American War, talked of a new frontier to describe the naked aggression and brutal suppression of the Philippine Islands while it was being annexed into the American orbit. Slotkin recounts the dime novels and detective stories of the late 18th and early 19th century that were always full of gun-toting heroes and villains where guns were the answer to all problems. Slotkin unpacks the destructive impact these myths have had on America's social structure. He follows the rise of Western movies with their heroes who resort to the quick draw and relates them to our current urban conflicts with their copious gun crimes that are bedeviling inner cities. For a large swath of the U.S. population, the gun is a palpable symbol of freedom and a bulwark against tyranny. When the black helicopters land or the blue-helmeted UN troops begin taking over Town Hall or the city square, citizen soldiers will once again, as they did in Concord, Massachusetts in Revolutionary days, grab their muskets, or should I say their AR-15s, to do battle with the would-be invaders seeking to take away our freedoms. Indeed, as a favorite war cry of gun extremists is, the only way they will give up their guns is it will have to be pried from their cold dead hand. John Wayne as the Ringo Kid in Stagecoach, Clint Eastwood in a string of flicks for a few dollars more through the Dirty Harry movies, along with hundreds of others in the same genre, have served to erroneously plant some wrong-headed notions in the minds of many an inner-city kid about what it is and isn't considered manliness. The gun has become such an icon of the, quote, red-blooded American, close quote, that instead of receding into the background noise of society as the country evolves, some states have not only passed laws allowing citizens to purchase concealed carry permits that allow them to take their firearms into bars, one state, to thumb its nose at those who want restrictions on guns, even allow the legally blind to purchase gun permits. Slotkin explores the deep connection that tethers as so much of America as the longing for the gun and all it represents, to partially explain why the body count in our cities and our country keeps mounting. Now, of course, I have my own perception for drawing the nation away from the deadly love affair with guns. I submit that if a contingent of large, bulky black men, all at 6 foot tall or taller, all packing AK-47s, shotguns, AR-15s, and 9mm sidearms, were to descend on Montana, Idaho, or one of those states where white militia groups go to play war games, these African-American militia types would, in short order, attract the notice, attention, and presence of every law enforcement official for miles around, demanding to know what they were doing out there with all those guns. The black war gamers, of course, would just pipe up and tell the guardians of the peace they were just exercising their right to bear arms, the same as their white counterparts do. You know, I sort of think it wouldn't be long before some state legislatures after that would start rethinking their positions on gun registration and concealed carry permits. Considering what happened last week with the conviction of a gentleman for shooting a 17-year-old black man for having his radio on too loud, you can see that this is not anything that's receding or is about to leave our social consciousness soon. And it seems that in some places in America, just to say that you feared for your life is enough reason to kill somebody with a gun. It is a strange and very terrible time, and black youngsters are very much at risk. They have to be very careful. So that is more or less what the book notes is about tonight. It's about the book I hardly recommend, The Gunfighter Nation. It's a rather large tome, but it's worth reading. And Slotkin has his finger on the pulse of something. Our myths make us, and that myth of the gun is so deep into the American psyche, we cannot seem to part with it. We hang on to it and hang on to it no matter what happens, no matter how many people are gunned down the streets, 20 children killed in a school. We still don't want to put any restrictions on these weapons. And subsequently, there will be more and more of this sort of behavior happening. We have people being shot in movie theaters for throwing popcorn at somebody. We have people just walking into theaters and killing people. We have people walking into malls and shooting people for no apparent reason. And sometimes they not only shoot the people, just open up and spray the area, then they shoot themselves. These are very, very confused, probably unhinged people, but we don't seem to be able to summon the will to do anything about it. Barack Obama has tried, Vice President Biden has tried, Congress has tried. Nobody can seem to make that segment of the population who believes so firmly in guns to change their minds. Now it's time for us to go into another segment of our program called Right Jab. And this week, my right jab is at Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee, who did something that was so unpardonable and so strange. I mean, I've seen the right wing do some very, very, well, sometimes they prevaricate or just shave the truth up a little bit or just flat out lie. But this time, this one takes the cake. I mean, Corker, let me give you the situation. There's a Volkswagen factory in Tennessee that the United Auto Workers wanted to organize, which they have an absolute right to do. Unions aren't prohibited in America. We even have a labor board, so it's nothing unusual. Except in the last few years, unions have become under constant attack from officials from all over the country. But this time the UAW had done something that had not been heretofore successful. They were able to begin to organize this Volkswagen plant in Tennessee. So much so that it frightened Tennessee's officials, because there's this ironclad thing that the South will be what they call non-union shops. They just don't want unions. So they were about to have an election, and Bob Corker said, and this was a flat-out falsehood, I've had conversations today, and based on those and assurances that should the workers vote against the UAW contract, Volkswagen will announce in the coming weeks that it will manufacture its new mid-size SUV here in Chattanooga. Well, the verse of that is if they do become unionized, they won't build the SUV there in Chattanooga. Now, the interesting thing is Volkswagen turned around and made a statement saying, well, no, we're not against the unions. We work with unions all over the world. And, you know, we have union shops, and we have councils that include union and non-union workers. This is not a problem for us. But this was maybe enough. This was maybe enough to sway the argument against unionizing. And they were able to fight off the union. The union lost the vote. But to deal in this kind of a low, underhanded method of trying to stop people from being able to form a union sort of unsheaths what it is that the right wing is willing to do, how far they're willing to go to win. They're willing to say and do anything, whether it's about unions or the Affordable Care Act or guns or or the debt ceiling. They just often just have these talking points which aren't real. It reminds me of something that I believe it was Mark Twain said about telling a lie. That a lie can go around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. And this might be a very good example of it. So desperate were they to keep unions out that a senator, U.S. senator, imposed himself into the election process to take a side and decide against unions. And I've never seen that in America yet. Now, we've had some problems in the early days. We had strikes, we had strike breakers, we even had people who were, we even had the U.S. Army breaking up strikes and shooting people down. But all of that's in the past. We thought we were beyond that. Now we have a new kind of a thing where a U.S. senator has gotten up and said hey, you can't do that, we're not going to allow it. And we'll do and say anything to keep you from unionizing, which is just unbelievable. The unions in this country have lost a lot of their power. As a result of that, we have all these calls for to raise the minimum wage, because unions are good for negotiating a higher wage for their workers. It's not a bad thing for people to make money. Henry Ford, he raised the salary of his workers, and when the other car manufacturers were just really upset about that, he said, listen, they have to be able to buy the product. It's time for a break. We'll be right back. But before I go, I want to say you can catch us on Twitter, the Earl Morgan Hour, Facebook, Twitter, the Earl Morgan Hour, not the Earl Morgan Hour, but Earl Morgan Hour. Facebook, the Earl Morgan Hour, and if you wish to phone into the studio to talk on the air with us, it's 714-888-7444. And you are listening to Sketches of Spain, one of my favorite pieces by one of my favorite artists, Miles Davis. We'll be back in a minute.
The views and opinions expressed on GoPro Radio Network shows are solely those of the speakers and are not necessarily the views or opinions of GoPro Radio Networks, Inc. or its affiliates. These broadcasts are provided on the understanding that they do not constitute professional advice or services. Individuals who speak in these broadcasts express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions. GoPro Radio Networks and its affiliates do not necessarily endorse or oppose any particular opinion or conclusion discussed in these broadcasts. You may not edit, modify, or redistribute these broadcasts in any way without the express permission of GoPro Radio Networks, Inc. GoPro Radio Networks assumes no liability for any of your activities in connection with these broadcasts or for your use of these broadcasts in connection with your website, computer, or playing device.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a great opportunity. If you have a product or a service, a talent, or something important to say, now's your chance to have your very own radio show. Whether you're just starting out, a veteran looking for a professional platform to enhance your presentation, the GoPro Radio Network is the premier place to cultivate and share new and exciting content. We'll help you to grow your audience and keep it growing long after your first broadcast. Now you have a voice. Call 212-696-8562 today or visit www.goproradio.com and you'll be amazed at how easy and affordable it is to have your very own show on the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
We're back. I'm Earl Morgan, the host for the Earl Morgan Hour. You can catch us on Twitter, Earl Morgan Hour, on Facebook, The Earl Morgan Hour. And if you have something that you'd like to contribute to the broadcast, you can phone us at 714-888-7444. And let me remind you, the music that we have is Sketches in Spain by Miles Davis, who is I just can't get enough of that guy. He's one of my favorite artists. But tonight, or today in the studio, we have today's guest, who is someone I happen to be well acquainted with, Tawana Williams, who also happens to be my daughter, is here to talk about her program, Civics for the Emerging Activist. Good evening, Tawana, and welcome to the Earl Morgan Hour.
Good evening, Daddy.
Well, why don't you just say, all right. That's going to sound strange on the air. Tell the GoPro audience, what is your definition of civics and why you say the need to create the program existed?
Well, the definition of civics is anything that has to do with citizenship, which includes volunteerism, community work, block association work, whatever has to do with your elected officials, which is voting registration, all of that, committee people, and making sure that you go to them in your neighborhood and in your really small local 2 or 3 blocks. All of that is civics. Why I needed to create the program is that I was raised with civics. My parents gave it to me. I never learned it in school, so they did. And as I got older and more politically aware, I realized as I was talking to my peers that they did not have it. So when I would ask them, do you know what your senator does? They would say no. And these were Harvard graduates, Yale graduates, Cornell graduates. And so I knew that they weren't stupid, they weren't ignorant, they were just miseducated in regard to citizenship. That's why I started.
Okay. I want to probe that you didn't have civics. Mm-hmm. I happen to know the schools you went to. I'm very aware of those. And I know that you didn't have civics at the Lutheran school, and you went to St. Dominic, and you didn't have civics. Now, we used to get that in high school. I got it in high school. Your mother certainly got it. She got it in grammar school. So what happened?
Well, in 1969, the nation officially took civics out of the public school curricula. And considering the year, we can probably figure out why, 1969. That is not something that is confirmed as a truth, but that is when it happened. And so for some 20 plus years, we have not had civics. So the possibility of the 60s movement or the movement in the 40s for unions is less. It is almost impossible because those citizens were acting out their civic redress. They were doing what is legal to do for your redress. If you don't know what your legal redress is, then you just feel like this is the way it is and there's nothing that I can do. Actually, let me say a truth. The reason why I actually started teaching the classes was that my cousin Ryan challenged me. He was going to run for office. He came to my house. I kept going on and on like I always did about needing civics, and he challenged me to teach those classes in his office. This is what made me finally stop just making a curriculum and teach it.
Well, let me, just for our audience, you said your cousin Ryan,
yes,
who happens to be Ryan Struther, who is the Director of Recreation for Jersey City at this point.
Yes.
How long has your program been in existence?
We will have been in existence for 2 years on March 1st. My first class was on March 1st, 2012, in the management office at the hub.
Well, we got to say where the hub is. It's a strip mall in Jersey City. We call it. It's known colloquially as the hub. So that's where you were teaching it?
Yep, right in the hood, right at the hub, in Ryan's office. He gave me his office for class.
Okay, now, how many students have passed through your program to date? Do you know?
Yes. There are 196 that have taken my classes and workshops, and after I graduate my next class, which is going to be at my 2nd anniversary dinner, there'll be 213.
We'll get to that dinner in a minute. And where are the classes held now, and how often are they held?
The classes are held probably every 2 months. I've held them many places. I've been at the Urban League. I've been at the Hub. Now I am holding them at a new community space, Simply Feel Better Self-Help Space, which is where I work. I've had them at the Y Building. I've had them in Lincoln High School. I've had them in JCU. I've had them at St. Peter's College.
Now you your press information says that the students get a chance to do and to get hands-on opportunities to participate in civic affairs. How does that work? How do you do that?
Well, I didn't really. Well, I didn't expect that. When I first started, I thought I would just want to teach civics. But after my first class graduated, I only graduated 3 students the first time. My student called me, who is Angela McKnight. She is the founder of Angela Cares, and her concern was that because of the redistricting, seniors' votes were being suppressed because they had divided up the buildings, and some seniors could vote in their building, and others were sent 2 miles away. She called me to say we have to do something, and my response was, well, you have your handbook. And she was quiet on the phone with the, like, you're not going to help me. So I did, and she won it. She won, and all of the seniors.
When you
now,
say she won, what do you mean? Can you give us some specifics?
Absolutely. There were 5 buildings that were displaced. Immediately after she got the press, they gave her the building back on Ocean Avenue, and felt like maybe she was going to be happy with that, but she was not. So we continued on, and we went to the city council several times, and we got the executive director of the Board of Elections to work with her. It took them 4 months to find alternate voting sites for the seniors. So some of them wound up back in their buildings voting, but most of them wound up like across the street at a charter school and next door to a fire station, but someplace where they could actually get to vote, as opposed to 2 miles from their voting site. That made me add on advocacy to my mission, and since then we've won. We have a student who actually helped in Hoboken to keep the affordable housing from going away, because that's been a big fight. Her name is Rosemary Risco. We all helped, though, not just her. So I tasked my students with fighting for each other when it's time to fight after they graduate.
Well, I was at one of your graduations.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I expected. I just didn't expect to see all those adults. Mainly because I think civics is something you learn in school, in high school, or like your mother in the grammar school.
Right.
And I go into the room, and there are all these adults, and I'm thinking, these people didn't know anything about civics? And then I asked around. And I've actually asked people, and they say, well, what is civics?
Yeah.
I mean, I come up in a time when everybody knew what civics was.
Yeah.
That was my producer.
I know.
In that point, who was an extremely erudite and bright young lady.
Absolutely. Well, Daddy, the reason that they were all adults is because I felt that there was a crucial need for adults. Like, I know kids need it too, but if we have grown people who are intelligent, well-educated, erudite, accomplished, and actual activists that do not know the governance of their own nation, we're kind of in a crisis mode. So I teach adults right now because of that, but I would love to teach kids.
But it was interesting to go into a room. Not only that, but it was such a diverse group of people.
Yeah.
Some of the people were young, and some of them weren't. And I'm standing there thinking, what's going on here? Wait, they don't know anything about civics?
Yes. They were young and they were old. They were black, white, Latina, Arab, Hispanic, all of that. Everything was in that room, because it's not there's nobody that doesn't need it. And because I intend to teach it to my entire town, to my state, to my nation, to everyone. Every single person is welcome, and I invite them, and I intend to make them take it. If I can make you take it, guilt you into it, whatever you need to do, I intend for you to take my class.
Now, again, I just want to we can't say this enough, but when and where are the classes held?
The next class is going to start on May 1st, 2014 at the Urban League of Hudson County from 6 to 7:30 p.m. in the piano room. This class that I'm teaching now will be graduating on March 22nd at our 2nd anniversary dinner. Okay.
Now, again, would you give the address of the Urban League?
It's 253 MLK Drive, Jersey City, New Jersey, 07305.
And what time will the classes be held?
6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. starting May 1st, Thursday, May 1st.
Okay. Now, I will probably come back to that again and again and again, because I've learned something about advertising. Advertising has taught me something. You can't say it enough.
Nope.
So we will go over that again and again. People may get sick of it, but if you notice, your latest Passant ad comes on 14 times in 2 minutes. That's because they want to make sure you get the message. I think we need to do the same thing. Now, I noticed you said for the emerging activists.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know my background pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was an activist, I suppose.
You absolutely were.
But what interests me is you said that you learned your civics from me and your mother. I don't remember sitting down to teach you civics.
No, I didn't ever get a civics course, but I did get parents who understood that you need to understand how your nation is governed. And so you two were both activists, and my brother and I did not want to be activists. We wanted to grow up and never help anyone. We were sick of the people. The people were just not people who cared about anything. We felt they were ungrateful, terrible people. But we grew up and realized why you did what you did. It was inevitable that we would end up the way we did. My brother, a history teacher, and a teacher activist, and myself, a civic activist, a green activist. We learned it at home. Like we got, Dad, you forced us to watch Jim Lehrer, NewsHour. We were too young to understand what's going on. We watched it, but we didn't understand everything. But children understand what they understand. So we watched it and we got what we got. We understood we needed to watch the news.
All right, we have to take a break. We will be back to talk some more about civics.
Awesome.
Just stay tuned.
That was awesome.
GoPro Radio, the fastest growing network in the galaxy, is leaner and meaner with a new attitude, new technology, and a brand new lineup. Tune in and get wired every Wednesday, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern with the BCS Experience featuring Byron C. Saunders, formerly of New York City's WBAI. Then at 6 p.m., it's the Black Agenda TV Express featuring sought-out political commentator Glenn Ford, formerly of America's Black Forum. Then at 8 p.m., it's time for Kay Thompson Live with the legendary radio host Kay Thompson of Inner City Broadcasting's WLIB and her son, renowned actor Eric Payne, who starred in such films as Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, Drop Squad, and many more. Then, at 9 p.m., it's Food Rap, featuring Nina Markel, a.k.a. the unofficial mayor of Jersey City, and former Viacom marketing guru Shauna Glover. Last but not least, at 10 p.m. Eastern, it's The Sexy Party Show with the bad boy of dating Mr. Locario of I Love New York fame and his partner in crime, Miles Cunningham. So get wired every Wednesday from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern only on the GoPro Radio Network, www.goproradio.com. Listen to the voices in your head.
You want to know the truth, folks? Do you really want to know the truth? Well, perhaps you can't handle the truth. But if you can listen to GoPro Radio. Tune in at www.goproradio.com. Now, have I made myself clear?
GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head. I know I do.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
We're back. This is Earl Morgan, your host of the Earl Morgan Hour. You can follow us on Twitter at Earl Morgan Hour, on Facebook at The Earl Morgan Hour, and our phone number here in the studio is 714-888-7444. We really do invite you to participate if you wish to by giving us a call. We'll put you right on the air. My guest tonight is Tawana Williams, who has a program called Civics for the Emerging, what is that again, Tawana?
Activist.
For the Emerging Activist. And I want to talk to you a bit about that emerging activist thing. I was once in an organization, as you know, called the Black Panther Party.
Yes.
And the very first day of the very first political education course or a class we had to take, which were mandatory, no matter what you thought you knew. The instructor came in and put on the board, all things are political, and underlined it. And I really came to, it was like a light went on. It was an epiphany. And he's right. I've been married, as you know, for 43 years.
Yes, indeed.
And let me tell you, there's a lot of politics going on.
You were married for more than 43 years because I'm 44.
Oh, yes, that's true. Well, 45 years,
Yes.
I'm sorry. And there's a lot of politics going on there. Anytime you get any two human beings together, it's politics. But what I'd like to know is how you took a dry subject like, to me, civics was dry when I took it in high school. It was, the Constitution and all of that stuff, and how the government worked, and you sort of sat there and you took it in. But how do you make it interesting and exciting?
Well, I don't know if you intended to, or if it's just my unique little familial glitch in this whole activist malaise that we have in our family, but I don't find it dry, and I think because I don't, I don't have to do much to make it seem interesting to our students. The whole fact that there's been 20 years of no civics makes it very exciting to people. They do not know that the Ninth Amendment says that any right not comprehensively stated in the Bill of Rights is your right. They don't know that the First Amendment says that we actually do have a separation of church and state. So all of these debates that they have with no knowledge, they have it. Once you go through just the Bill of Rights, they don't know that there's a petition clause and that you have redress. That's exciting to them, and I want to empower them as activists. So you don't feel like you have any power if you don't know that. But once people hear that, they're like, oh, we could do that, and that is, it excites them, and because they're excited, it excites me, and they've done a lot of good from just knowing that they are responsible and empowered to do it. Just that simple thing, that a call campaign can make all the difference. Just all of us calling. You don't have to pick it. You can, but you don't have to. Start with calling. So it's exciting to me. That's exciting. I've watched all my life nothing happen, where you guys had all this stuff happen. For me, I've watched people do nothing my whole life.
Yeah, that's I guess that's true. I come from a time when I was younger, where there was so much political ferment going on. I mean, we're talking civil rights, we're talking the Black Power movement, we're talking the war in Vietnam
Women's
and the
rights.
anti-war, then women's rights, which grew out of the civil rights struggle, and gay rights, which grew out of that.
Yes.
But by and large, people sort of went to sleep on it.
My whole life.
You know when I knew it was kind of over?
When?
Good Times, the record. Then when that record,
Good Times.
when that record, it was like it sort of symbolized, we're not going to do that stuff anymore. We're just going to go out and have a good time. And people's political activism just waned. It almost just died. And nothing was going on, and nothing you could do it seemed like people were just out of it. Now I'm beginning to understand. They didn't teach them that they had a right to do these things.
No, responsibility. A responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, that's as a citizen, you have a responsibility to do these things. I totally agree with you. Of course, I should, because you're after all.
That's how I learned that. Yeah.
The other thing is, how do you get funded for your program? That's always an issue here, in especially in the Black community. Where do you get money?
Well, I don't have any money. My students pay me $5 for the classes. I do my fundraisers. I sell T-shirts. I have a big dinner every year. I have one patron, Roscoe Taylor, who gives me my swag. I have one teeny funding source that's a Civic Right Foundation, and they give me a little bit of money every year, but I don't really have any money is what it comes down to.
I didn't know about Roscoe. I got to explain when she said Roscoe Taylor, because our audience won't know him. Roscoe Taylor is an insurance agent, has an insurance agency on Grand Street in Jersey City. He's an old friend of mine. As a matter of fact, I used to be sort of a manager of a band.
Yeah.
He had Arise. And I always say about Alice and Roscoe, if you don't like Allison Roscoe, you need to cut your wrist. Because you'll never like anybody. I had no idea he was funding your
He just is my patron. You need a patron when you are grassroots. I could get more, Daddy, but if people tell me they want me to teach their book, they tell me they want me to teach their way, and being your daughter, you know I'm not going to let them come in and do that. So I
Lord
don't have
have
any
mercy,
money.
do I know that?
I have nothing. It is civics for the emerging activists. I don't want 6th grade civics taught. That's not what I'm doing. And no, you're not going to teach. My students graduate, and some of them teach, like Carol, who's my boss, Angela McKnight, who I spoke of earlier, Tamika Raines. They have organizations, and they teach. But they teach civics for the emerging activists, not 7th grade, like you said, dry, boring civics, because grown-ups don't need that.
No, they need something they can use.
Right.
Something they could put into action as soon as they can.
Yes, and they need the coalition of us.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've noticed something about a generation, your generation, and the one under you, maybe just a little ahead of you. They don't seem to, in the black community, they seem not to participate in civic affairs that much. Now, there are some people. There's Elizabeth Perry, who we both know,
yes, my
who
student.
is over the line.
Yes,
but,
my student too, though. I love her. She's my student too.
But I mean, you got to. Elizabeth Perry is an activist in our town, who's just incredible.
Yes, amazing.
And the garden movement, we have these block gardens now.
Yes, community gardens.
Did that come out of the civics movement?
No.
Or was that part of it, or did it?
No. We got our community gardens because of Michael Selinger and a few other green activists. You met Michael when you went to the award ceremony. Michael and a few other people realized that we were the only ones without community gardens in Jersey City because they made the guidelines for adopt-a-lot so archaically difficult that no one applied for the lots. He went to the city and it took him 4 or 5 years. And he got those redone. We had a real application that made some sense. And in 2 years, we have 44 gardens because people were just waiting for it. He's an unsung hero. He doesn't like the spotlight, nor do any of the people who helped him. Carol Arnold was also in that group. But they did it. They made it possible for us to have gardens.
Again, I have to tell people, Carol Arnold is a member of the Jersey City Board of Education school board. She's a member of our school board in Jersey City. She's also an attorney. She's also my former block association president. And she's somebody you don't want to mess with. You don't want to cross.
At all.
She can be a really tough person. And she's the best. One of the best things that ever happened to us on Astor Place was the day she and her husband and her family, Roland, moved on our block.
Yes.
We also have, I can say this, we have a garden on Astor Place.
We absolutely do. Back to Michael, though. He is the founder of Storms Avenue Community Garden, which I'm master gardener of. And we have a garden on Astor Place that is a coalition of PS number 12 and Astor Place Block Association. The garden founder is Tinia Bland, and Tinia, Liz, and I approached the principal of 12 School and got that going. We had some help from the Board of Ed, but that got going because of our collaboration to use that space, because the space was there was nothing that you could use it for. It doesn't work for what they wanted to use it for. So why not a garden? So Tinia started PS number 12 Community Garden. She grows everything in there. They have movies in there. They have activities in there, and Tinia is also one of my graduates.
Yeah, now being an Astor Place occupant, I live on that block. We had a block association last summer. We had a block party that was
off the chain.
It was off. I mean, I wasn't actually there. I went down to. It was the same time we had the remarch of the March on Washington. So I had to go to cover that for my paper. But when I got back, and I'm coming home, and I see all these people. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and I see all these people milling around out on Astor Place. So what's going on out there? It was still people out there that not gone home.
It was so much fun.
It must have been. I wish I could have been there for that. But, I've been to every one but that one.
Yes, I know.
But again, tell us where and when your next class, and how people can enroll, how they
Okay.
can get into it.
The next class starts on May 1st, 2014. It will be at the Hudson County Urban League, which is at 253 Martin Luther King Drive in Jersey City. It starts at 6 o'clock and goes till 7:30. You will then be there for 5 Thursdays after. If you would like to get into the class, if you would like to register, you can give me a call at 201-492-8093.
Is there a website?
Yes. We have a website as well, www.civics4, and that's the number 4, emergingactivist.weebly.com.
Okay, that's a mouthful of a. So give the telephone number and give the website again, please.
Okay. Telephone number, Tawana Williams, 201-492-8093. Website, Civics4, the number 4, Emerging Activist at Weebly.com.
Weebly, how do you spell that?
Weebly is spelled W like water, E, B like boy, L like lollipop, Y.
That's double E?
Double E, WEEBLY.com.
All right. We're just about to wrap up our program now. And I want to thank Tawana Williams. Well, I'm sorry, we're going on a break. We're going to just be gone for a minute, so please stay with us. And if you'd like to call in, it's 714-888-7444. So right now we're going to go to break. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.
Okay, I got it. Ready to.
You want to know the truth, folks? Do you really want to know the truth? Well, perhaps you can't handle the truth. But if you can, you can listen to GoPro Radio. Tune in at www.goproradio.com. Now, have I made myself clear?
GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head. I know I do.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
We're back on the Earl Morgan Show, Earl Morgan Hour. You can follow us on Twitter, Earl Morgan Hour, Facebook, The Earl Morgan Hour. And our phone number here, if you wish to speak to on the air, if you have any questions answered or have any comments you'd like to make, is 714-888-7444. I have in the studio with me tonight Tawana Williams. She's talking about her Civics for Emerging Activists. Let me ask you this. I found there's this group of young people who who startle me. First of all, because you had a program that you gave out awards at on the space on Communicore Avenue.
Yes.
And against my will, you gave me an award. But it was exciting to be in that room.
Yeah.
Because we think of everything today, in my time, as something black or white. Mm-hmm. That particular program, it was so diverse, and it had so many young people, white, black, Hispanic. How did you work that out? How did you do that?
Well, I don't know. I didn't intend it. I didn't think it was a unique thing to do. I did not get raised around just black people. I was raised by you and mommy around all people. So it didn't occur to me that having all the people there was something exceptional. All of those people supported me, all of them in that room. They supported me and they believed in the mission of civics. And they came out. I wasn't expecting them all to come. I didn't expect it to go like it did.
It was a large crowd.
And I didn't know what I was doing. So it came out really well, despite the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. And so now we're going to have another year of it. And now I know what I'm doing a lot better. And I have students who have graduated. So we're going to have the same wonderful energy again, same diversity as we did last year.
I have a theory about that particular program and what I see going on in the United States. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this, but there are certain things that are breaking down that used to exist.
Yes.
Astor Place was always a very diverse block. I mean, we had whites,
Yes.
black people. Now we have black people, Hispanic people, Arab people, Korean people, but we're getting something else happening.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of young, what we used to call urban professionals, yuppies, but they're not really yuppies in the old sense of the word.
They don't exist anymore.
These are people who want to find a decent place to live. They're not urban pioneers who came here to chase us out.
No.
They just want to be good neighbors. And I have a theory that this is where we have to go in this country if it's going to be a country.
Yes.
I remember seeing Chris Matthews when they did a debate at the Ole Miss. Now he's sitting on a dais, and behind him are students from Ole Miss of all colors, all races. I remember the fight they had
to make them be able
to make the one black man in that school. They had a war going on.
Yes, literally.
And when I went to your affair, I was struck by the people there. They were just, there's something going on here. Maybe it's just what I'm seeing, but I think something's happening.
Well, I'm the age between the young. I'm 44, so I'm not really young anymore, and I'm not an elder yet. And what people my age are struggling for survival, really. We're never going to get those 20-year jobs, but we're too old that they don't want to pay us for, our skills. So you have a lot of people with stuff to offer, and they need civics. They need it, because if they don't, then they won't know how to get their unions back. They won't know how to have their worker rights. They won't know how to survive and be a community. We have to have community when you don't have the old fallbacks of, I'm going to work for somebody for 30 years and I'm going to get a watch and I'm going to retire.
Right.
We're not going to do that. People my age, we're not going to do that. Young people are not frightened by it, but we got told we were going to do that, and we're not. So we had to make an alternative to it.
Let me ask you if they've been able to escape a syndrome that's so American, which is instant gratification. If you don't get it right away. I mean, people don't have any long-range ideas anymore. Companies operate on a quarter. They got to get a good quarter, not a good year. That is something that's, maybe it's because of the movies where everything ends at 90 minutes and the boy gets the girl and they walk away in the sunset. That's not real life. No. Real life, the struggle continues, as we used to say. How are the young people today fit or ready to understand that struggle has to continue?
Well, my students encompass the young people, the middle-aged people, and the old people. And only the old people get that that's not a reality. The people, my peers, don't a lot of the time, and neither do young people. This is a process. We did not get our rights like that.
No, it was a long struggle.
It is a process, and you can't stop fighting once you get them, because you have to, power doesn't concede itself. Whatever you stop paying attention to will be taken away. So it's a process, and that is my constant. They get tired of me saying that. They get tired of me telling them that it's their problem and they need to do something about it, and that it's not going to stop. It's not going to ever stop. That power doesn't concede itself. So there's never a day we don't have to get up and face any of this stuff. That the reason why we got to grow up like we did was people faced that down decade after decade and day after day, and they never relented. But they did have the education. We don't. So here you are getting the education, and my thing is, once you have it, then you have no excuse, and you have to respect the process. So process means you're not going to have it tomorrow. It means that today we get this one victory, and then it might even get taken away, and we have to get it again, and we have to keep on moving. And then those other 2 points, and I end this with that the first thing we talk about is deliberation, compromise, and consensus. This is the way that governance happens. Legislation is done through committees deliberating, coming to a compromise, and making a consensus, and then they legislate. The people will not get action unless they deliberate, make a compromise, these 2 points, and then they come to a consensus and they go to their legislator. That's a process, and it's a really long one sometimes. I don't know. I'm hoping that they hang in there with me.
Okay, we're getting close to the end of our program, so what I'd like you to do, even though we've done it already, we want to talk again. I want you again to give the name of the program or the class or the course, and where you can sign up for the course, how you can sign up, where it will be taught, and then we want to talk about your dinner. So make it quick.
Okay. The name of my course is Civics for the Emerging Activist. My next class starts May 1st, 2014 at the Hudson County Urban League, which is at 253 Martin Luther King Drive. To sign up for classes, call me at 201-492-8093 or contact www.weebly.com www.civicsfortheemergingactivist.weebly.com.
Say that website one more time.
www.civicsfortheemergingactivist.weebly.com.
Two E's in Weebly.
2 E's in Weebly.
Okay. Now tell me something about the dinner you have coming up March 22nd.
This is our second anniversary. Our keynote speaker is Pastor Mona Fitch Elliott of St. John's Lutheran Church. She is an activist, pastor, political activist. She's from the Fitch family, the Fitch sisters, who are famous in Jersey City. She's our keynote speaker. We're going to be honoring Riaz Waheed. He is a homeless activist. He does all the homeless outreach all of this time when people have been cold. Riaz has been out there making sure everyone gets to those warming centers, spends his life doing it. We also are going to honor the Sharing Place, which is a food pantry at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. They have been serving people for 30 years, and they do not require you to have ID for you to get food.
Do you mean there are places where you have to have ID to get food?
Yes, everywhere.
ID to get food?
Yes.
Wow, we're really getting into some 1984 stuff here.
So my organization supports that food pantry because they resist that.
Yeah.
And those are our awardees this year.
Okay.
Oh, and JC Slam, Ben Figueroa.
What is JC Slam?
JC Slam is a poetry group that has been winning poetry slams with young people for some 5 years, who has never gotten any support from the city. He has been doing it on his own. He is 34 years old. And he is now going to get all of these young people to California with no help this year. He wins in our name. And
sounds like somebody we need to bring on our show.
Yeah.
We're out. That's it. Good night for the Earl Morgan Hour. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Daddy.